Hi, Brenda. It's so nice to meet you. It's a pleasure. I took a look at your paperwork, and I understand that you are 43, that you are married, but you are seriously considering a divorce, and I'm so sorry about that. That you have a daughter that's 12. You've been married for 14 years, but you described your daughter as having autism, that she's on the sort of is some of the middle of the spectrum. And so you have many questions, but one of the most important questions was you wanted to know what to look for when you're looking for an attorney, when you have these types of issues. So one of the things I would suggest is to make sure that when you go speak with an attorney, sometimes people are so nervous they forget even kind of basic things. And make sure that you have a notepad and a pen because these usually when you go in for these consultations, it's a big data dump and you're not going to remember everything. And you want to make sure that you get the most bang for your buck. And so that's important. And speaking of bang for your buck, sometimes, especially in family law, that consultations will often be free. So you want to make sure that when you call to schedule a consultation to find out if there's a cost associated with that. Because sometimes it could be, like I said, free. Sometimes it can be a special, initial consultation amount for like $50 for an hour. But if the attorney charges the normal rate for the hour, the normal rate for that attorney is $350 an hour, then you're going to be expected to pay that amount before you leave that day. So you always want to make sure you know how much your consultation fee is. Bring something to write with. Also, make sure that any attorney that you hire has a formal retainer agreement, or sometimes it's called an engagement letter. And that's just an agreement, stating in writing exactly, how much the hourly rate is, exactly what type of services they're going to provide for you, and what's the scope of their representation. In other words, sometimes attorneys do um, different areas of the law. They do family law, they do guardianship. They might, do some other areas of the law. So if you have some things that kind of bleed over, you want to make sure that you know exactly what's covered and what's not. And speaking about guardianship, one of the things in your particular case that I would look for in an attorney is somebody who has, first of all, experience dealing with divorces that involve children that have um, developmental challenges. Second thing is within that, I probably would ask the attorney if they have experience doing guardianship or if they're familiar with the guardianship process if they never actually had a guardianship case. And the reason why you want to know that is um, if your daughter requires later on when she turns 18, if she's going to need a guardian, then you want an attorney who is going to have you know, that that future possibility in mind when they're doing the divorce because if they set things up correctly in the divorce, it'll make the guardianship later on much easier. So I would definitely find out if the attorney has experience or knows anything about the guardianship process. Makes it so much easier. The third thing is when you finally do hire an attorney, you always want to make sure that you're very efficient with your time. So what I would suggest is, unless it's an emergency, when you have questions come up, I would either speak them into my phone or type in the note area of my phone, and just have your questions accumulate over a week or 10 days or so, and just have one phone call. So that way you're not calling every time. Oh, I think of something. Oh, let me call my attorney and ask da 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 da. Again, unless something's very time sensitive, you have to make a decision and you need to know something from your attorney. That's fine. It's different. But if it's just kind of general questions as you're moving along, then it's much better to just have that accumulate over a week to 10 days or so, than just have one phone call. You can ask your 5, 10, however many questions that you have. Okay, so that way you save money. You save on billable hours. You save money. So it's so important. Okay, let me see what else I have on my notes as far as looking for an attorney. And also too, before you hire an attorney, get a sense of how you feel, about them, what their a lot of times the attorneys will kind of give you a sense of, what their philosophy is, or, how they usually practice. And so some people are kind of low relational. They don't really like talking to a whole lot of people. They just kind of leave that for the paralegal, or, sometimes, you can see that they've kind of struck a balance between, okay, support staff can take care of some things, but, you'll have access to the attorney. And so you just kind of get a sense of, how you feel you would have, a rapport or a working relationship with that attorney. Just, I always say sometimes you just really kind of need to go with your gut. Third thing, I guess probably the last thing as far as looking for an attorney is, what is their phone call policy? Meaning, you know, will you actually be able to speak with the attorney when you call, even if that requires the attorney call you back, or is the attorney usually have, will you only have access to their support staff and not really have an opportunity to speak to the attorney unless it's some type of, again, some type of emergency situation. So sometimes that's very important, because that can be something that can be very frustrating if you really feel like, there's always a gate or a barrier and you really can't speak to the attorney. Again, there's some things that the support staff, yeah, things that they can take care of. But if you really have a question, you really feel like you really need to speak to the attorney, you need to make sure that you'll have the type of access that you expect from that attorney. Um, Also, just one other quick thing in regard to your daughter. You should be able to see my screen. So let me just pull up the internet for a second. And I think that you might have mentioned when we spoke briefly before we had our session today that you weren't really familiar with the MHMR of Denton County. Oops. Texas. And the MHMR, let me just click on this. Okay, so the MHMR is really just a nonprofit community center that really specializes in helping people or in caregivers who have kids, or just people that they're taking care of, whether they're adults or kids, who have some type of health diagnosis or developmental disability, and you'll see that here. And if I click on services here, it just kind of tells you that, they really help with support. They'll have different support groups that you might want to meet with. They also will help you. I know that you're getting some services through the school for your daughter, but there may also be services available through the county that you weren't aware of, that you may be able to take advantage of for your daughter. And another thing is they also have respite services. So, if you really feel like if there's an emergency, you have to, I don't know, leave town, whatever it is, if you have an emergency and you really feel like you can't bring your daughter with you, they have information available to you, whereas, you know, there might be other options where you're, that might be available to you to help you in that situation. Okay, so as you can see, they have, intake and referral hotline here, and you see the number here. And I will also probably just send you a screenshot of this and as a PDF and send it off to you so you don't have to look it up again. And just hopefully that will be helpful information for you. And they're great over there, and they'll be able to give you, any type of information that you might need. So let's move on to some of the other questions that you have.